Oh yeah, we seem to be live. Good. Hello and welcome to Social Media Business, the podcast about social media and business. Today I'll be talking with Dave Early, and we'll be talking about Twitter hashtags, what to look for in a social media strategist or editor, some of the things that are happening in the media scene here in Australia and overseas, and a couple of questions have come through, including one on what's the return on investment of social media and how do you explain that with regard to resourcing of social media. So, hi Dave.
Hi Laurel. Hello everyone.
How are you doing today?
Very good. Very good.
That's
Looking
good.
forward to another good discussion with everyone.
Have you had a busy week?
It has been quite busy. Trying to remember what we've been doing. Planning. We've got a lot of planning things for State of Origin coming up next week. Quite big for us. So.
Oh, that's sport.
Yes.
Oh God. Oh. My whole timeline fills up with people talking sport and teams and no, please make it stop. I guess you don't feel the same way, Dave.
No, I like a bit of sport.
Okay. So what's new in the world of media, social media, Australia and global?
Well, I suppose the first thing we could talk about is maybe future for journalists, moving from steady employment to lack thereof, with the axing of quite a lot of jobs at Channel 10 yesterday, with Wake Up, Early News and Late News all going.
So the morning TV shows and the news department being decimated.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing left at Channel 10 now is a couple of reality shows and reruns of Get Smart or something.
Well, be a bit harsh, but they do still have their 5:30 news and some other bulletins, but those morning ones were not rating for them. So they dropped them. Studio 10 is still there, but that's not a straight news or a morning show. Really,
that's something like a panel, what do you call it? Like it's like The View or something, isn't it? The Project, Studio 10.
Studio
I think
10.
I saw it once. Yeah, I think it's like The Project.
I watched it.
I was just thinking, just to explain it to people who haven't seen the show. I think it's a group of personalities sitting around talking about the subjects of the day, much as our good selves are doing today.
That's right.
I find it interesting that Channel 10 can't get a handle on morning TV, and I'm wondering if it's because they're aiming not at the mummy demographic that Sunrise on Channel 7 tends to own, and then and surely somebody can come up with a morning TV show that's suitable for people who are virtual workers or work from home or have a different agenda. I don't know. There seems to be some lack of understanding of the tribes of the marketing segment across the board, not just Channel 10. So I don't know.
I think it's hard to break into that domination by Today and Sunrise in the morning sector, and I mean ratings-wise, I don't think ABC Breakfast, their breakfast show does very well, but they can continue without having ratings and advertisers.
But they don't need to. They need to have the few thousand people that are senior in business watching their show, which is why they're quite grown up and serious news and stuff. 7 goes for the low-hanging fruit of tabloid meets mommy TV, as far as I'm concerned. And and I would like an alternative to those two stations, but there is nothing, and so I don't watch anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, and this is the problem, isn't it, with dying TV?
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, I mean,
maybe what they could do is get YouTube to sponsor a segment, an hour on Channel 10, and then YouTube could choose stuff and put it up during the day. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be. And you'd have a whole world of people able to contribute and get involved in the process.
But it would need to stay away from that whole worst videos, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Car crash videos.
I mean,
I just don't like those.
In the same way as, you know, live hangouts on air or things like that. There's a whole bunch of possibilities for them to run with and get people involved. Whether that would...
Yeah. And the only issue for me is that Google really needs to fix these hangouts. The technical issues that we have every single week. And I'm pretty technically savvy. You know, I've worked in IT&T for 20 odd years, and the fact that I can't restart a hangout when it dies. So we lose the whole audience, we have to start a new one, we have to re-invite them. That's just nuts. And I can't get a permalink so that I can't tell people every week 10 o'clock, which, by the way, it is, guys, every week, Thursdays, 10 a.m. Sydney time. You know, click on this link. And because of that, we don't get a sustainable audience easily. You know, we can, but it's not easy. It's just, there's a lot of stuff going on with YouTube, with Google. Yeah.
But where we were going to possibly go with the axing of jobs at Channel 10 was what those journalists can do and other journalists have done in moving into a self-publishing environment, which obviously involves a lot of social media aspects and blogging, and some have moved into, you know, PR public relations, but there's definitely a publishing aspect that they can at least try to break into. The I suppose as a lot of media sheds journalists, there's more niche opportunities available for experience and expertise on particular topics to build a business audience for that niche.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things at the moment is that the shift from bought attention, bought media, you know, traditional media, into two alternatives. And one is earned attention, which is social media, and the other one is owned media. And we're really seeing a massive shift of monies from traditional media into owned, not into social. So companies are coming out with their own industry magazine. They're coming out with their own TV stations. They're looking create content. So there's some really interesting opportunities there, because I always think of PR as just writing press releases, but of course there's this other whole area which is about writing ebooks and industry magazines and a whole lot of other things as well.
And building, I mean, in social media a lot we talk about personal brand, but building the company brand through thought leadership on a company level, as opposed to people who do personal branding. Now companies are doing their, you know, I mean, a lot have been for a while, but more are doing it now. That, like you said, ebooks and white papers and that sort of stuff. And
I think NAB's got their own TV station and their own magazine. And of course, Qantas has got their own TV station now and their own magazine called Q, and they curate podcasts and different things. Do you have a shout out for any journalist that you think is doing really well in the personal branding area, or is working to help an organisation build their brand through content creation? Somebody who's made that shift?
Off the top of my head, I mean, you can, I suppose, someone like Mia Friedman or Tim Burrows. So Mia Friedman from Mamma Mia or Tim Burrows from Umbrella. people
Yep.
now wouldn't necessarily think of them because it's those things themselves are now a big brand. People might not now see those people as journalists or content creators or marketers who've broken off and started something from scratch, but they did.
Yes.
And now they've built that up into a whole machine that is quite successful. But they did start those as small personal sort of ventures, I guess.
Yeah, and they took their commercial savvy from being in the media space with media buying and things like that, and migrated it into social media, where a lot of bloggers have excellent original source content because they've been in their industry for years and they actually can write, or they've learnt to write by starting off really badly in my case and kind of getting mildly okay as they went along, but they don't always bring that monetization aspect to their business.
Yeah.
And and it's fascinating for me when I go and look at the rate cards of journalists who are now blogging, Janoggers who are now blogging. They have their rate cards up, and they've, I don't have a rate card on my site, and I've had my blog for 10 odd years, but then again I don't advertise. So it's interesting to see that merger, and I'm wondering whether the next media tycoons will be social media tycoons that have moved in from traditional media into this space, because you said it's a machine, it's a big enterprise with lots of staff and researchers and writers. So yeah.
And it was interesting just reading some responses to a post on Mumbrella yesterday. So Tim Burrows had responded to a few people. It was from last week, talking about paywalls, and someone had asked about whether Mumbrella would move to a paywall sort of model and that sort of thing, and Tim Burrows responded in the comments. And I think what you see with a lot of online, they're not startups in the sense of like a tech startup, but online blogs and content pieces. They don't get, in the same way that mainstream media don't get good advertising dollars from online advertising, neither does someone like Mumbrella necessarily. They get enough for it to make a difference in because they have a small base, whereas mainstream media, the dollars are too small to pay the wages. Whereas in a startup where you're the sole operator, or you only have a couple of employees initially, that online advertising is actually quite helpful and can get you by if you need to. But the main source of the income is from offline activities. So, for example, Mumbrella has Mumbrella 360. So they have
events and conferences,
and things like that. And that's where the business model and is successful, is most successful, and that's been true for most small startup blogs and things like that. As they get bigger, they're still not generating much from online advertising, same as mainstream media aren't. But they actually have offline events that generate money, whereas mainstream media don't, mostly.
Well, I made the decision pretty well on day one not to go down the advertising path. In fact, what I decided was if I didn't start advertising, I'd never have to have that discussion about why I'm blogging. Because I think we already know, we knew 10 years ago that advertising was the worst business model around community management, online community management. So, for instance, I think MySpace makes more money off of their offline events, their album launches and product launches and things like that. Even the $500 million they got from Rupert Murdoch, that Rupert Murdoch got when he owned it from Google Ads, it's still not there's no growth there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And the other thing is, I think advertising works, but where I would be advertising is not in the media channels, but in the owned content channels. So if I was a tourism destination, I'd be much more likely to go and want to advertise in the Qantas magazine than I would in any traditional site. To me, it's about connecting and seeding that content directly into the tribe, and I would really like to see ADMA and AMIA and a lot of the industry organizations thoroughly get into content creation and own the niche magazine for their industry, because that's where I think advertising would pick up. You know, if you had a job and you advertised it in the industry organizations magazine, and if the industry organizations magazine was actually top notch, that would be a really interesting shift in behaviors, maybe.
Yeah, it's I'm just trying to remember the name of. I should know it, but MEAA, the Media Entertainment.
Yeah, media. I call them media.
The Journalists Union. So they bought. Just trying to remember the name of it. A PR. Was it a magazine in the last couple of weeks? Anyway.
Oh really? Because I get that. I'm a member. I get their industry magazine. So Equity or something, I think it's called.
I don't know.
Okay, so they bought someone, did they?
Yeah. It could have been independent publisher.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I'll try to do that.
One of the other things I think that is really missing, particularly here in Australia, is that understanding of the monetization of the peer-to-peer economy. So we see the rivers of gold of classifieds have shifted into eBay, but the niche eBays, like, you know, Etsy made $1.1 billion last year, they don't seem to be hooked into any of the either owned media or traditional media sites here in Australia. I can't think of too many companies that have gone out of their way to buy a peer-to-peer economy site. So I find that really surprising given the massive growth in that area.
Yeah, no, it's the PR report is what the MEAA.
Oh, Glenn
Frost's PR report.
That's it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the MEAA bought it off him. Yeah.
But they would be buying the database, really, because the content. I mean, I used to subscribe to the email newsletter. I don't. Yeah, it was alright, but probably Mumbrellas is better than that one.
Yeah.
But for me, for me and who I am and what I read, not that I've actually went through and unsubscribed from all my e-newsletters about a week ago.
Wow.
I had 16,000 unread messages, and I was losing sleep and crying.
Know that feeling. Yeah. So.
Just with this, if we were to look at a social media job with a media company, either an owned media, so somebody who's putting out a magazine or a newsletter that's curating content or whatever, or a social media editor job with a traditional media company, with your experience and being one of the top social media editors in the world, what would you be looking for that sort of role?
Very kind of you to say, Laura.
You're paying me to say that.
Yeah, that's right. So someone who has a history of community management. It's not just about social media understanding, but it's also knowing a bit about community management, because as you grow a social media community wherever it is, you need to be able to manage it and shape it how you want to, or at least try to. So the social media editor should understand a bit of online communities and community management and then have a pretty good understanding of and a lot of involvement um, in at least mainstream social media channels like Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus. At least have a passing involvement, but a good understanding, and being hooked into communities on those platforms and being able to show that, I think, and how they navigate that. And often you'd be able to tell that, for example, on Twitter, you'd be able to tell that just by looking at somebody's profile, how engaged they are.
How do you audit somebody's profile? Like when you look at somebody's profile, how do you look at them and go, oh yeah, they get it, or not sure about them? What are you looking for?
I guess just conversations, conversations that they're having, what they're talking about, and it's not just what they're, because Twitter, as well as being useful for business interaction, is not just talking about business. So they're not. It's also talking about personal life and other things like that. So I think that would probably be important for me as well, is seeing how people interact personally on.
There's a guy on Twitter with here in Australia with 100,000 or 200,000 something followers, and I've never seen him make a personal comment. He's always linking to an article that he wrote, which is about a ratio of 1 to 3 with two articles that other people have written.
Yeah.
And it's all completely automated, so he's pulling the RSS feed in and then automating it on an hourly or twice hourly or something basis. Yeah. And I find it interesting, though, that he has so many followers, because I don't think he's actually on Twitter ever. It's all automated, but he curates the content and sends it out.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's a very broadcast mindset, and you talk about broadcast and just pushing all the time, as opposed to interaction and communication. So that's that sort of thing I would see as they're not using Twitter that well. They're showing some sort of thought leadership, and they're providing a service in terms of interesting links that people want to read about, but they're not interacting and cultivating any sort of community.
It is interesting to me, because I think when I look at curators of content as opposed to maybe an original source or original voices, they are really good at distributing the content, but they don't do what I think social media does, which is so interesting, which is the shift from product journalism to process journalism, which is instead of this is the end product and I'm presenting it to you, but let's put this up for discussion and figure it out collaboratively with the community. And one of the things that I like about the headlines that you write on social media for the articles is that the headline that you write, or that, I don't know if it's you, but Courier Mail has, is they're always, they're hooks, and it's about bringing the community into the process of, oh my God, look what happened, how can we understand this? But when I click on it and I go back to the newspaper, it's a very traditional headline, which to me is a product headline, which is about they give away the goods in the headline.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, wow, it's really different. It's a very different writing for social media than it is for traditional media, I think.
Yeah. And I don't write most of the, I don't do the majority of the posting for example, Courier Mail. It's other online editors who are all contributing, and I do some of them, but it's pretty much shared around. So, but I guess people get a sense of what works a bit, and there's always movement in that as well. Learning what is working, what's not working, or what's changing, and people don't want to see anymore as well.
I think that's one of the things with, and in fact, actually, this was one of the questions that someone asked. Let's see, it's what did she say? Oh, what's the return on investment for social media, particularly when it comes to staff and finding staff?
Yeah.
And I found that interesting because it was like it seems to me that because you can measure the social object, you can measure each media article that goes up, you get immediate feedback, or you also get velocity, so it doesn't have to be immediate. You can tell how quickly it's going viral. Yeah. On each thing, you seed into the community. So unlike a newspaper where you kind of get the whole newspaper and check out, for me, the sports section, this is a way of going, and you can rework the headline later in the day and re-release it again and say, we just didn't quite get the hook right, and some more bites by changing the hook. So there's a real return on investment, I think, of social media, which is that immediate and then ongoing measurement of, is your stuff working?
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah, and definitely, and so you can see that in social media, but also directly online as well. So on the website, where which you can measure differently from social media. So you can see, for example, something that goes really far on social media but doesn't necessarily get any clicks or many clicks through to the website.
Yes.
Which may just be because of the image or what it's about. Might get a lot of likes and a lot of shares, but nobody's really clicking the link. Whereas other ones can have an immediate and visible effect on traffic to the website, and are getting decent virality and shares and likes on something like Facebook as well, but not necessarily as much as you would expect for the amount of traffic it's generating. So there's also a balance there in whether you are always just going for traffic or you're also going for social influence. Which doesn't necessarily generate traffic.
It doesn't necessarily convert to a call to action or a click. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, for example, the best
is that why you guys do a lot of those hanging posts, and you won't believe what happened next, so that people have to click through to find out what happened next?
Pretty much.
Oh, it's no secret. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
and I always go, no, I have to click, and I don't want to. I'm being emotionally manipulated, and I go click because I want to know what happened next.
And people realize that as well, and some people, let us know that they're sick of seeing that, but
it works.
But it works.
At the moment, it works.
At the moment, and that can change, and different types might work differently. Like I don't like to see that all the time on our stuff. You won't believe, or what happened next is shocking, or that sort of thing. But some version or something that doesn't have to say it like that, but doesn't necessarily give it all away to get people.
Well, it's interesting because the hanging question, what happened next, you won't believe what he did next, you won't believe what the judge said, you won't believe whatever. That seems to be the new top 10 tips, because I remember when BuzzFeed used to say the top 10 videos of cats and the top 50 things you need to do to find a wife, and the top 5 things you should be wearing this summer.
Yep.
It seems to replace the top lists a little bit. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, and I think it'll change as well. So, they're very much there's even a SlideShare deck that you can go look at from, I think it's from Upworthy. So BuzzFeed and Upworthy are notorious for this sort of what happened next is shocking, and all that.
And at 3 minutes and 6 seconds, you'll start crying.
Exactly, it'll destroy you, or and that's come
So
from the
anybody who's watching this video, at 15 minutes and 11 seconds, you'll bang your head against the wall and wish you were dead. Do you think that's a good hook?
Yeah. You won't believe what happened at 15 minutes and 11 seconds. So yeah, the listicle, as it was, the list article, as it was previously described, was.
I haven't heard of that before. Listicle.
Yeah. It's, for a long time that was like put out there as for marketers and bloggers and stuff as well as this is a good way to get a hook and people interested, to give them a list and say.
It's something that I did with my blogging classes for a few years, was to say, try and chuck out a list every week. It's what people search for.
Yeah.
Hey, what can we call the I think we should call them emoticals.
Emoticals. Emotional articles?
Yeah.
I won't say what I was thinking. So something like top 7 SEO tips or something like that would, people would generate, clicks, and maybe that still does for that audience who's looking for hard tips and tutorials and things like that.
Education as opposed to stories.
As opposed to something emotional, which is more for like a mass audience, a general audience, not necessarily a niche audience.
So one of the questions was about crossing streams. Should we rewrite our content depending on whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Plus, and if you have the same followers on all of those different streams, can you post the same thing? And do you find that you guys position your articles with, maybe you would do listicles on LinkedIn and emoticals on Twitter, Facebook? I don't know. Do you put the same content up on all the streams?
We do, and for us at least, the audiences are different. So I don't think there's much crossover. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think there's much of a crossover. The only people I know who follow me on all the channels are marketing and comms people who seem to be DNA wired for communications. But, everybody else out there, the mums and the dads and the whatever, they choose their poison. It's like they choose their bar and they belly up to the bar and they get your news from that bar, not somewhere else. Yeah. The only difference.
But you must change your voice a little bit for LinkedIn, or what you post up on LinkedIn.
Well,
surely?
Actually, on LinkedIn we don't have a company courier mail page on LinkedIn.
No. I'm coming up there to Queensland. You've got to. People share things on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no.
Massively.
I wanted to for a long time, but I think there's a global one, like News Corp or something like that. But anyway, that aside, at least on Twitter, you have to change for length anyway. So that will often change most of what you've written for Facebook or Google Plus, because unless it's a short post on Facebook and then the person might use the same text on Twitter, but often it would need to be changed somewhat anyway.
Now, do you find the hashtags change from one platform to another?
Not really. Nobody's using hashtags on Facebook. Often when we use them, if we use them, which I do occasionally, like I did for the budget stuff. But other than that, seems Facebook people still don't want to see hashtags. They're still not used to them.
They seem to use them. The trending ones seem to be used, but there doesn't seem to be those community of interest hashtags. You know how on Twitter you can go and join Journ Chat or Oz Teach or Tuesday's Spit Bucket, I think, for wine. that doesn't seem to exist on Facebook because there's groups and community pages. So I'm wondering, but I reckon elections and budgets and things like that, I would use the hashtags there on Facebook.
Yeah, and we would. So I use the budget hashtags, mainly just on budget day and the couple days after in the budget-related stories, because it is still just sort of an event thing where if people are going to follow it, especially on Facebook, it will be during the event and not necessarily continually a week later or anything like that. People won't still be checking that hashtag if they're going to click on a hashtag and look.
It's a temporary or what would you call it? It's almost like just when people come together for a short term. It's a short term community of interest, I guess, rather than
like a pop-up community or something like that.
Yeah, a meetup or something. In fact, I wanted to cover hashtags today. So I think a lot of people don't understand fully what hashtags are, and when I see them creating their own hashtags, I realize they really don't understand what they are. And I think the first thing with a hashtag is that it's a search. So it turns a keyword that would normally be black text into blue text. You can click on it and see everybody else who's talking about that subject matter. What hashtags do you like, Dave, personally? What do you listen to? What do you follow?
Every now and then I dip into the sort of the live chat ones for journalism related. So there's but again, those are often at a specific time for a specific period.
So like which ones and what days and what time?
Sorry?
I beg your pardon, what was that?
That are basically promoted as a 1 hour, once a week live chat session. So there's not much point necessarily following them outside of that time. If you're joining.
Which ones would they be? Can you tell me which one?
Yep. So like WJ Chat for web journalist chat, Journ Chat, which you mentioned.
And what days are they on? Do you know? Can you remember?
From memory, there's one today, right now.
So Thursday at 10 a.m.
Yep.
Okay. Or 11.
I've got it in my calendar. I'll open it up and check. Yeah, so today is WJ Chat.
Is that worldwide or just Australia?
Worldwide.
Okay.
Yeah. So based in the US, most of the ones I follow are US time, and it just depends who runs it, whether they say it's Pacific time or Eastern time in the US. So yesterday was Media Chat, and
so Wednesdays is Media Chat. Yep.
Wednesdays is Media Chat, and another one with the hashtag MuckUp, and that's Muckrack.
Oh yes.
Yep.
What was their old name? They used to have a different name.
Did they?
Yeah. They were a leaderboard company. They didn't just do media leaderboards, online social media leaderboards. They did all sorts. Anyway.
Well, I think they do more.
Muck Chat.
So it's the Muckrack Chat, but it's called MuckUp. So that's on Wednesdays. Tuesdays is Journ Chat.
And I think PR Chat is on Tuesdays as well.
Oh, is it? Journ Chat has always been quite PR heavy. It was started by a PR person.
Was it Sarah or someone? I can't remember.
Just trying to remember who that was. So yeah, those are sort of set ones.
So they're the ones for your industry, but yeah, I agree. I think organizations should find what hashtags are being used for their industry. And, besides being a search, it's temporary communities. Oh, no, I think there's one before temporary communities of interest, which is where it's not really a community, it's more like when you hop in the elevator with someone or you're on a train with someone and the train suddenly stops and you just chat for a few minutes about why we stopped. It's they're like threaded conversations, so that ability to hashtag a keyword at the end of a question and then have 5 or 10 responses from people who use the keyword, so you can search and find all the responses easily. And that was a limitation with Twitter because the replies didn't show up easily, unlike on Facebook where you can see the replies. In the old days with Twitter, you couldn't see them, so you had to use a keyword to hook the threaded conversation together. Do you ever make up a hashtag like that?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I do really long words. Really like.
Yeah. Sometimes something like that is just being silly, but but I don't expect anyone to
use it.
Use it regularly or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I use a couple quite often. One is just wondering. So if I've just got a question like, I don't know, how does this work? Just wondering. It's like it's not an important conversation, but I'd like people to respond, and I use that just wondering so they can link all of the questions together.
Actually,
I think the other one is the emoji hashtag, which is #sarcasm, #irony, #I can't believe it.
But another one is sort of like Twitter help. So for quite early on, there was where you would ask a question and hashtag Twitter help, and basically I can't be bothered searching for it or trying to find out myself, so help me, Twitter. And so it was just sort of like Twitter help.
And then I think the hashtag just Google it.
Yes, exactly.
is a common response as well. So yes, there are sort of humor and funny ones, and Twitter help would allow people to search for that hashtag and see if there's any questions that they can answer, and it's interesting to be able to do that.
In the same
way, the sustainable communities? We mentioned that there are temporary communities that happen on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday or a Thursday. I think there are also other ritual communities that happen, like Tuesday's Just Giving, which is for not-for-profits, not specifically for one not-for-profit or a specific chat, but if you're going to come out with a Twitter fundraising campaign, you do it on Tuesday with Just Giving, or Thursday's Throwback Thursday, or Follow Friday, and all those kind of hashtags are interesting.
Yeah. The other one I forgot, there is actually a community managers chat as well. I just can't remember. It might be
CMMGR, I think it is.
CMGR chat?
Community Manager MGR, yep.
Yeah.
CMMGR. Yeah, that's for online community managers. Now, there's some really big sustainable communities that often have millions of tweets a day. So I'm thinking here of #AusPoll, AUSPOL, Australian Politics Discussions. That doesn't seem to be on any particular day. It just seems to be a sustainable community that is a community of interest that allows people to connect with people who are talking about politics. Do you participate in AusPoll at all?
I don't participate, but I do. If I've got space and I think it's worth it, I sort of might seed a Courier Mail article or link into AusPoll, but also when they're Queensland specific and state specific, so then you can have a QLD poll or NSW poll if it's state politics specific, or even if it's federal, you can combine the two if it's AusPoll but related to Queensland QLD poll. So you can combine those as well, and there are, it's not as big obviously because it's not national, but there are people who participate in those state-based politics discussions as well.
Okay. So I just want to flick into a screen for a moment to just sort of show amplification and ripple effect around media and hashtags, because I think this is such an important thing, and I just want to talk about how a media company used it as well. In the case of I don't know if you can see this can you see this diagram, Dave? Yep. So a lot of organizations talk about their own stuff, and they're sitting up here in this bubble, and they're kind of away from all the social media things. They're just broadcasting out on Facebook and Twitter and Google+. And the interesting thing for me is when down here you seed an object, and then you start to use the hashtags of the communities of interest. So if you choose the right day, you can use #JournChat or PR Chat if it's about public relations or journalism or whatever the ones are for your industry. And if it's a big community of interest that's on there every day and it doesn't have a specific ritual or rite of passage, it's like Ozpol, you use #Ozpol here. It takes your social object, your article, your link, your photo, your video, and then seeds it into these large communities of interest. And people often ask me, how is it that I'm able to, I've only, in quotation marks, only got 55,000 followers on Twitter and 65 or whatever it is on Google+, but how do I get my articles in front of a lot more people? Well, what I try to do is use the correct hashtags. So it gets me outside of my own subscription base and gets me into these others. And the only warning here is don't hijack hashtags to do promotions, because there was an equivalent of Bed Bath & Table in England. It's not them, it's a similar name. And the intern in the social media area put up 50% discounts on tablecloths, #Mumbai bombings.
What?
And you've got to ask yourself, I know, don't even go there, but you've got to ask yourself, what was he thinking? Wow. Hey, though, we got millions of people to see what we were talking about because millions of people were following the dramatic unfolding of the Mumbai bombings.
That reminds me, that's not just necessarily, like, it's bad enough trying to jump on a hashtag that's trending and seed something completely unrelated and I mean, not right, but also can happen in promoted posts or promoted topics or promoted trending topics like on Twitter. And a credit company did that.
They hijacked a trending topic.
They are sponsored. So when you see Twitter trending topics, and the top one is always a sponsored one. Someone's sponsoring it. So you click through it, and it shows you the tweet at the top that is the sponsored one from whatever company, and then the actual discussion. So this one was actually about when Osama bin Laden was killed.
Oh, right.
And a credit company, for some reason, to promote their credit and insurance options, had purchased the promoted trending topic of, whatever it was, Osama bin Laden or OBL. I think it might have been OBL dead or something like that. That was, and they had their tweet just as an advertisement, really, at the top of that as the sponsored thing, and it was, that sort of thing.
Was it completely off topic or not?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Somebody gave me some good advice a few years ago about advertising with Facebook and with Twitter, sponsor tweets and stuff. And if you're going to do bought attention on earned attention sites like social media, don't polish turds. And what I thought was really clever about that, it was take your most popular articles and advertise those, because they're usually educational, funny, they're things people want to read, and they engage with you and they think, that's interesting, I want to read more, I want to connect more. But the minute you feel like you've got to spend money because you're not getting the attention, you're not earning the attention, so therefore you'll buy the attention, you're polishing turds. Yeah. And it's such a clever, and I've noticed lately, for instance, the Commonwealth Bank is buying sponsored tweets on particular hashtags and stuff. But it's always really interesting articles. It's totally relevant to the hashtag, and it's Gary Vaynerchuk calls it left jab, give, instead of right hook, ask or take or call to action. So they're giving out interesting information, and they're giving out stuff that's really relevant to the audience, not just promoting their products and services. So don't polish turds.
Well, to my knowledge, we never have.
I think there's been a bit of polishing going on.
No, it was interesting on budget night though that budget 2014 there would be no need to promote that hashtag. It would have been trending on its own. It was the accepted and used hashtag by everyone for the budget speech and related articles and everything across all media. But I found it interesting to see that as the sponsored or promoted trending topic right at the top, because it wouldn't have needed to be promoted. Often you'll see something promoted where someone's trying to promote their own hashtag, and that's up the top that wouldn't otherwise be there. So I clicked through, and it was actually news.com, news.com.au, who were promoting the hashtag, and so had bought the promoted spot, and it was quite clever that basically every time I went back and looked at it, the promoted tweet or sponsored tweet at the top of the stream was a different tweet from them. So it was to a different story each time.
Because there's hashtags not about
but they were all their current relevant budget stories. The current relevant budget stories about the breakdown. This is these are the winners and losers. This is this is the story about health. This is the story about this. So it was quite a good use of the promoted trend on budget night. I thought.
Really clever. What I find interesting is when the bought attention of, for instance, paying for sponsored tweets goes up against the earned attention. So I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with what Deloitte's did for the last budget or the one before, but Deloitte, which is the big consultancy company, picked up the Twitter account of Budget or something, Budget Oz or Australian Budget or something, and then they did a conversation diary. And in social media, because you're earning attention, you need to spend time and energy on it. So they spent about 4 weeks beforehand seeding and putting up content and interesting links under this Budget Twitter account, and they followed a whole lot of journalists and retweeted their stuff, so they ended up with quite a few hundred financial journalists following them. And then in the 48 hours of running up to the budget, they intensified their conversation diary again, and on the day of the budget they were the most followed, the most what do you call it, like accredited or accepted as the thought leader on the budget account. And to me that blows anything you can do with bought sponsored tweets out of the water, because whoever's trying to buy the hashtag attention just won't get the attention that an account like that using the hashtags and connecting with the right community influence will.
And so and obviously that's where an extremely good planned out and executed strategy comes into play as well.
Really, very clever of them, and they had all the key elements, the key influences, the hashtags, they had the diary planned, and a whole lot of things. So one of the questions for this podcast was, around the return on investment of social media, and I look at the soft ROI of do your customer service calls drop because customers are helping customers, etc., and do you get more donations if somebody donates and then shares or Facebook's whatever tweets that they've just donated. So there's a whole lot of soft ROIs, but there's also that, I think, interesting area where you don't have to spend the money, but you have to spend the time and the resources. And traditional media is really helpful if you don't have the time or the resources.
Yeah.
To give the attention, because they've already earned it. Newspapers have already earned it with their articles, etc.
Yeah. Well, in some
I
cases,
just want to just check. There's just one more question, and then we'll have to start wrapping it up. This was. This is from. Let me just have a look. So the Della asked the question about the return on investment and solid business cases to convince management to fund social media. I will put some links up more about that, because there's about 30 different what we call KPIs, key performance indicators, which show if your social media is working, what the call to action is, what the outcome is, what you're expecting, so you can see at a business level. So there's a little bit too much for this particular hangout, but we have covered some of it. But one of the questions, just really quickly to go around, was what do we think about the Q&A hashtag, which would be one of those temporary communities of interest on Monday night around a television show, smashing the previous records, because there were 65,000 tweets, smashing the previous record of 50,000. And for those of you that didn't follow the Q&A TV show on Monday night, it was the Treasurer of the Australian government, Joe Hockey, talking about the budget that came out, which was quite a controversial budget. So what do you think of that sort of number, and what does that mean? Is it important? Is it not important, Dave?
It's extremely important, because it indicates, it's indicative of viewership as well. So there's been studies done, and in the US, but also specifically here in Australia, the QUT, Queensland University of Technology, and Axel Bruns there has done a lot of work, and his team there, a lot of work on Twitter and society, but also Twitter and media. And Nielsen has got a new ratings, a new rating system that ties into Twitter as well. And there's a lot of research that shows that Twitter, like the dual screen, the two-screen experience, which is kind of a buzzword in TV for the last couple of years, where people are actively engaging in conversations on social while they're watching their TV shows. And there's a lot of research behind it that I might be able to find the link and send it to you to include in the notes, on how that affects viewership, and that they've basically shown how the two-screen experience and increase in Twitter activity around a show and a show's hashtag has an effect on viewership, and can measure, can sort of help indicate how popular a show is going to be. But it's not just in retrospect, it's also future planning as well. So the specific report I'm thinking of, they could effectively predict what the viewership would be based on the social conversations happening.
Right. So one of the questions I think that I have, though, is if everybody during the ad break has their heads down and they're on their iPads and they're tweeting and they're waiting for key moments to leave the immersive experience of the TV show and then join the social conversations, wouldn't you as a company be better off advertising on Twitter or Facebook or the social media or those Fango things, Beamly, whatever it's called? Wouldn't you be better off advertising there than on the TV screen, because people have pulled their attention away from the TV screen and now shoving it into the face of their iPad?
Well, yeah. I mean, you would think that that someone should be smart about that and take advantage of it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people um, a lot of people in the TV industry thinking about that.
I saw a really interesting video yesterday, and I recommend that people go on to YouTube and look up Applicaster Crossmates. And it's hilarious because you watch three friends watching a TV show, and they're saying, "Oh, she shouldn't get back with him. She should go with the other guy." And then the phone rings, and one of them picks it up, and they said, "No, they should break up." And then the guy turns around and looks out the camera at you, and it's this ability for the community to, at various points, there are metadata triggers where they can respond via SMS, Facebook, or Twitter and direct what the next thing is that's going to happen in the show. And they keep them engaged throughout the whole week, not just when the TV show's on. So you might be walking through a shopping mall and geolocation picks you as going past, I think in the thing it was Nike, and then the characters from the show come up on your phone and talk about something to do that extends the storyline. It's not an ad. Well, it's not a pure ad. It's an extended storyline about Nike and something else to encourage you to go into. So it's like to encourage you to go into the store. So it's like product placement plus plus plus. I'm not sure how I feel about the monetization side of it like that, but that whole idea that I can sit on my sofa and tell Orphan Black or The Blacklist or some other show that I'm currently addicted to what they should be doing, that's kind of awesome. What show would you like to tell them what they should be doing or not doing? The Origin, probably, one of the football games.
Well, tell them. No, I mean, you should see the, I can't remember if it was the Origin last year or something else, but the NRL's social media hub is amazing. Like, I can't remember if it was during the Origin or during last year's grand final, but essentially they, sent out a picture, a behind-the-scenes picture of this, the hub, social media hub, and it was big.
It must be like the NAB one.
Well, during the game, they're sending out live images, live graphics. In real time, they've got people creating graphics to share on social media, specific to both teams. So specific to New South Wales or Queensland supporters as well, and it's quite sophisticated. But I found
do we know which product they're using? For instance, are they using Salesforce's Marketing Cloud or Radian 6 or whatever it's called, or are they using something else?
I don't know.
That's your homework, Dave, for the next week.
I will find out, and I'll send you this link for. It's called Telemetrics. This is the research team at QT. They've got a whole bunch of data around Twitter and TV, and they've got weighted tweet index, Twitter excitement index, but also it was, what are we in, May? So it was almost 2 months ago that Nielsen launched Twitter ratings in Australia.
That's right.
And so it's quite a big deal now. TV and Twitter together, and everyone's trying to grab that second screen experience and lock people into their apps like Fango or Beamly or Jump In, or they've all got their second screen app that they want people to engage in, but it's sort of, from my view, that's sort of like trying to hide out the hashtag.
Which I find really shocking because they can't go with a commercial one because the ABC can't be supported by advertising, isn't that right? I don't fully understand. But anyway, all right, great. We're a few minutes over. Thank you very much. It was lovely chatting with you again, Dave. It's interesting to have a different, other perspectives on what's happening in media and social media and business here in Australia. If somebody out there in Google Hangout, Twitter, Facebook land would like to be on the hot seat next week, please let me know. The person nominated last week was Will I Am, and he chose not to show up today.
What?
I know. I honestly tweeted him and said, would you like to come on? Never heard back. He'll live and learn.
He doesn't realise the influence this long-running podcast has.
Might have sometime in the next 10 years. And also, if you're interested, you can post up some more questions. We have this every Thursday at 10 a.m. There will be a couple of exceptions coming up. I'm not sure if I can do it the week I'm in Bali, which I think is in about 3 weeks' time. But I don't see why not. You know, you can do Hangouts from your mobile phone, so I should be able to connect to a Wi-Fi somewhere in Bali. And we can yabber on.
Yep.
So if you've got any questions, let us know. I hope you found the thing about hashtags, you know, that it's a community of interest. It's a sustainable community. It's a threaded conversation. It's an emoji hashtag. It has a few different things interesting. And our discussion on media. And if you'd like to be on the hot seat next week, that would be fantastic as well. You can follow me on Twitter as Silk Charm, on Google Plus as Plus Laurel Papworth, and Dave Early is Early Edition on Twitter.
On Twitter. What am I on Google Plus? I'm Dave Early. On Facebook, I'm Dave Early.
Goody.
And on LinkedIn, I'm Dave Early. Yeah.
And we have to get the Courier Mail LinkedIn professional page sorted out. That's your second lot of homework for the week.
Good luck.
Thanks, guys, and see you next week. See you. Bye-bye.
See ya.